The harshest night of 1627 had settled over the mountains of northern Honshu like a rotting ghost. When Riku realized he had lost the only memory left from his father, the small knife with a thin handle, simple yet shaped by a master's hand, his breath froze inside the snow-filled air. A cold fear, like the wind that covered the bones of his ancestors, slowly opened in the center of his chest. As darkness sank silently over the village's wooden rooftops like ancient gods, Riku's mind instantly flooded with disaster. He imagined the knife being dragged away by a wild animal, or stolen by the village's ambitious children and thrown into the stream, or even worse, his father's spirit drifting away from him entirely with its loss. His hands wouldn't stop trembling, whether from the cold or from the images exploding in his mind. Riku couldn't tell in the darkness. When he reached the edge of the forest, the moonlight fell on the snow like a thin sword strike, and as the wind moved through the bare branches, it sounded as if someone was whispering. Riku's scratched hands dug through the snow, his breath turning to vapor and blowing back into his face. Losing the knife wasn't just losing an object, it was losing the final trace of his father, the man who had gone to war and never returned. To lose it felt like losing his entire ancestry, slipping through his fingers. His mind kept screaming, "If you can't find it, you'll lose yourself too." As Riku bent lower beneath a tree, the snow beneath his feet compressed with a faint sound. A heavy, old, patient presence was nearby, like the breath of someone standing behind him. He jerked his head up and saw him, an old man with a worn straw cloak on his shoulders, his face a shadow frozen by the cold. Frost clung to his eyebrows, yet his eyes held an unexpected calm. Riku stepped back instinctively. Not a master, not a villager. Who is this? He wondered. The old man didn't speak. He simply raised his left hand and pointed toward a stone lantern, half buried in darkness along the path Riku had just walked. The lantern swayed slightly in the wind, its dancing shadows merging with each other. The man gestured for Riku to walk past it without knocking it over. No words, no explanation. Riku froze. The claws of anxiety sank instantly into his mind. What if I fall? What if I slip? Why is he asking me to do this? How can I do it when the night is this dark? His pupils trembled. His throat tightened as he swallowed. The feeling returned. First a pressure in his chest, then a tightening breath, then a trembling he couldn't control in his knees. This was the anxiety that ruined Riku's nights. Nameless, everywhere at once, like a creature that lived inside him. But the old man simply waited, as still as a stone in the middle of a frozen river. Riku nodded involuntarily and took his first step. His feet sank slightly into the snow, and each crunch of his steps sliced through the night. The lantern swayed more sharply in the wind. Its shadow fell across Riku. It felt like a stone guardian challenging him. I can't do it. What if it falls? What if the wind gets stronger? He thought, each thought as heavy as the lantern itself. His breaths grew faster without him noticing. He could barely control his hands. Then the old man did something that cut through the storm in Riku's mind. He tilted his head slightly, a small, almost invisible gesture, but the gesture said, "Walk." Nothing more, walk. Riku took a second step, then a third. His mind screamed with panic at every movement. You'll fall. The lantern will topple. Why are you doing this? Yet he noticed something strange. His body kept moving. Even as his thoughts screamed, his legs moved forward, as if guided by something deeper. On the fourth step, the wind suddenly strengthened. The lantern swayed violently. A scream rose inside Riku. It's over! Everything's over! Just as his foot touched a loose stone, he felt a calm presence, like the old man's breath, move through the wind. It wasn't spoken out loud, but the swirling sound of the wind, the posture of the old man, and the motion of the lantern all seemed to say one thing: continue! Trembling, Riku stepped forward. The lantern leaned, but did not fall. When Riku took the next step, the screaming in his mind faded into the background. The panic was still there, but strangely, it no longer controlled him. It was as if the panic could walk beside him, but not command him. And finally, he passed the lantern. Riku's breath caught in his throat, not from fear this time, but from an unfamiliar sense of relief. When he turned toward the old man, he saw a faint spark of satisfaction in his eyes. The old man bent down silently and pulled something from the snow. Riku's lost knife. Snowflakes clung to its surface, shimmering in the moonlight. When he handed it back, Riku's hands were still trembling, but beneath that trembling, something new flickered. Very small, fragile, but unmistakable, like an ember hidden inside a dying fire. Riku took the knife. The old man turned away and began walking into the snowy forest. Riku called after him desperately, "Wait! Who are you?" The old man simply raised his hand. It had meaning, but the kind that had to be understood, not explained. When Riku followed the footsteps, they led to a small cabin, and on the old wooden plank above the door, a single word was carved: Gensei. Riku's heart pounded. That night, as the wind battered the forest, the stone lantern swayed and snow fell from the sky like a silent mourning. Riku had unknowingly entered the quietest yet greatest trial of his life. A trial with no name, a teaching with no explanation. But as Riku walked through the darkness, a small seed was planted inside him, something unmoving, and the darkness was no longer as dark. The dull blue hour just before sunrise made the mountains of northern Honshu look like giants carved from shadow. As Riku walked, still carrying the sleeplessness of the night, his breath rose in the cold like a thin mist. Master Gensei had guided him in the sharpest chill of morning without speaking, pointing toward the mountainside with only the tip of his staff. The anxiety within Riku still carried the tremors of last night's stone lantern trial. The frozen ground cracked softly under his feet, and the wind poked his face like tiny needles. Gensei never looked back once. He walked so silently, so steadily, that Riku wondered for a moment whether the master's feet even touched the earth. At the bend of the mountain path, a thin layer of mist rose. It drifted upward slowly, as if it were the mountain's breath. As Riku pushed through snow up to his knees, he was still himself, anxious, always calculating the future, quiet yet screaming inside. Gensei remained a mystery, a statue of silence. At last, they reached a wide clearing. In the center of it lay a mountain lake whose clarity almost stung the eyes. The water was so still that Riku first mistook it for a frozen mirror, but when he saw a soft haze rising slowly from the surface, he realized the lake was alive. Gensei set his staff down by the shore. Without any explanation, he simply gestured toward the water. Riku looked at the lake. He saw his own face first. The fatigue left over from the night, cracked lips, dark circles beneath his eyes. Even the slightest breath disturbed the reflection. A small tremor appeared on the reflection's forehead. At last, Gensei spoke 2 words: "Find its shape." Riku froze. What did that mean? Did anxiety have a shape? His heartbeat quickened. He leaned closer to the water again. This time, beside his own image, he noticed something else: distortion. When the wind blew gently, the reflection shattered into fragments, then reformed into an unrecognizable chaos. Gensei reached out and dipped one finger into the lake, just a single small touch, and the entire surface trembled. Riku's reflection split into hundreds of pieces at once. "Do you see?" the master said, then fell silent. Riku stared at the water. With every ripple, a different version of himself appeared, his jaw tightening when he worried, the line forming between his brows, the faint childhood ache flickering in his eyes. With every distortion, another Riku emerged. Gensei whispered as if showing a child the simplest truth: "The water is your mind." Riku took a deep breath, his chest tightened. He tried to understand what the lake was showing him, but his thoughts raced. What am I supposed to find? Am I meant to discover something? How can anxiety have a shape? Does it even have one? The faster his thoughts went, the more the water trembled. As if the more his mind panicked, the more the lake shattered. Gensi simply waited behind him without saying a word. Finally, Riku crouched down and just watched. The water rippled, settled, distorted again. Then he noticed something subtle. The shape of his anxiety wasn't a single image. It was a tremor, a momentary shattering, a flicker. Just as the slightest influence, wind, breath, a fragment of thought could disturb the surface, Riku's mind was disturbed just as easily. The shape isn't fixed, Riku murmured to himself. It's movement. Gensei said nothing, but for the first time his eyes glimmered faintly. Riku stayed beside the lake so long that his fingers began to go numb. At last, Genzi picked up his staff and turned back. "Everyday life," he said in a single sentence. "There is water there too." Riku didn't understand, but he followed. When they descended to the village, the morning sun had only just risen. In the blacksmith's workshop, Aiko's father pulled the bellows, sparks scattering like tiny lights into the winter air. Gensi signaled for Riku to sit beside the blacksmith. Riku sat. Aiko's father handed him a heavy iron bar. "Hold this." The moment Riku gripped it, the bar began to tremble. His hands trembled too. "Why is it shaking?" Riku wondered. "Is it me or the iron?" The blacksmith smiled. "When the mind trembles, the hand trembles." Then he brought the hammer down gently. The deep ringing sound struck Riku's chest. He shivered from within. Gensi merely watched. The next lesson happened in the market. Genzi told Riku to walk through the crowd without bumping into anything. People hurried past with urgency, some carrying baskets, others with loads slung over their shoulders. With every step, Riku panicked. "I'm going to bump into him. That basket will fall. The child will trip." The louder his mind screamed, the heavier his feet felt. Gensei walked behind him slowly and steadily, and somehow no one touched him. His steps flowed like a river, and the people separated around him as if guided by an invisible current. Riku, meanwhile, was like a stone stuck against the flow. His heartbeat quickened again. Sweat formed on his brow. Just as he was about to collide with someone, he heard a voice, faint, calm, unmistakably Gensei's. The lake. One single word. Riku slowed his breathing. He remembered the lake, the tremor, the reflection. He felt the firmness of the earth beneath his feet. He took a step. The crowd parted. He didn't collide. Another step. No collision. It was as if the market itself were a dark lake slowly calming. The day went on like this. Small tests, brief moments, unexplained lessons. When evening came, Gensei told Riku only one thing. The shape of anxiety is everywhere. Riku walked with that thought. The ripples on the lake, the tremor in the blacksmith's hands, the flow of the marketplace. All of it was the same. The shape of anxiety wasn't a fixed image. It was the mind shattering at the slightest disturbance. And Gensei had shown him without using a single unnecessary word. That night, before sleep, Riku placed a hand on his chest. His heart was still beating fast. But beneath that speed, somewhere deep inside, there was something like what he had felt beside the stone lantern the night before. A tiny but resilient point at the center of the mind. A point that didn't tremble at all. Riku couldn't name it. Gensei hadn't told him. But that point, it was there. And for the first time, Riku felt he could recognize the shape of his anxiety. The silence that settled over the village square that morning carried something sharper than winter's cold. Before the people awakened, before smoke rose from the hearths, before even the roosters crowed, a sound echoed through the stillness. Hard, rhythmic clashing of armor. Lord Kashiwara's tax brigade had arrived. The heavy thud of iron boots crushing the dark earth spread like the warning of a coming calamity, seeping into the village's veins. When Riku stepped outside to fetch wood from the small shed beside his home, He saw the soldiers' shadows. The mist drifted over their armor like the breath of ghosts. Their commander, beneath a black helmet, cast icy orders across the square. "Search the houses. This village paid less tax than last year. Whatever they're hiding, find it." The soldiers scattered instantly. Riku's throat closed. His heart pounded as if trying to break open a hollow inside his chest. Worst-case visions flooded his mind like a rising storm. They'll burn the houses. They'll take Aiko's father. They'll loot everything. If I can't do something, everyone will suffer. Riku's breath faltered, his feet rooted to the frozen earth. Then a scream rang out from afar, from the blacksmith shop. Riku's stomach knotted so suddenly he felt hollow. He wanted to run, but his knees trembled helplessly. Just as he was about to collapse, a hand touched his shoulder, not harsh, not forceful, but steady as a force rising from the core of the earth. It was Gensei. He said nothing, only pointed, not to the blacksmiths, but to the stone quarry on the mountainside. Riku stared at him in disbelief. "No, now, the village is under attack. Aiko's father." The words died in his throat. Gensei simply began walking. Even as panic screamed inside him, Riku's steps followed that silent man. As they crossed through the snow, the shouts of soldiers faded behind them, though in Riku's mind, they still echoed violently. When they reached the quarry, the air felt heavy. The charred stone foundation of Riku's childhood home still remained there, buried in snow, stained with a scent of ash that years hadn't erased. Riku's feet halted on their own. This was where his anxiety had been born. As a child, he had frozen while his mother screamed within the flames. His father had saved him, but the fire devoured everything. Since that day, even the sound of crackling wood knifed through Riku's nerves. His first fear had lived here. Gensei struck his staff sharply against a stone. "Sit," he said. One word, sharp, brief, unquestionable. Riku sank to his knees. The screams drifting on the wind from the village reached the quarry. Every sound cut through him. Soldiers shouting, something breaking, a woman crying. His heart beat so violently he thought it would shatter his ribs. Gensei looked at him, then scooped a handful of ash from the snow. The ashes were still gray, the silent remnants of the fire from long ago. He placed them onto Riku's open palm. "Within the fire," Gensei said, his voice merging with the wind's low moan, "there is a second heart. Find it." Riku's mind couldn't grasp it. "What heart? How? The village is burning. Aiko's father." His mind screamed, but his lips wouldn't move. Anxiety had tied an invisible knot around his throat. Gensei placed his hands on Riku's shoulders. It was the strongest touch Riku had ever felt, like being held not by an old man, but by the mountain itself. "Listen," Gensei said. Riku's thoughts shrieked. "Run! Do something! Move!" But his body stayed frozen. Then Gensei pressed the ash in Riku's palm against his chest. It wasn't hot, but the faint scent of burnt wood dragged old pain back from the dead. Riku's eyes welled, ash smeared across his chest, and tiny fragments scattered on the wind. And for a moment, just a heartbeat, Riku felt something inside his chest besides that frantic, terrified pulse. Deep down, very deep, there was another rhythm. Smaller, heavier, steady, a heart that didn't flinch at anxiety's screams. Riku gasped, this time not from panic, but from recognition. Gensei narrowed his eyes. "Panic," he said, "is your first heart." Riku's hands trembled. The words struck him like a stone sinking into his gut. "But," Gensei continued, pressing a finger to Riku's chest, "the second heart governs your movement." Then metal clashed in the distance. Aiko's father was shouting. Panic surged again, trying to reclaim the throne. "Run, you're too late. Everyone depends on you." But the second rhythm, that quiet pulse born from fire, kept beating. Gensei rose. "Now," he said, "which one will you follow?" Riku stood, his legs still quivered. But within the trembling was an unexpected strength, a center hidden inside the shaking. This time he didn't sprint in panic or retreat in fear. His steps were heavy but deliberate. The wind stung his cheeks, screams scraped at his ears, but his stride stayed firm. He walked not like a man fleeing chaos, but like someone watching reflections on a still lake. Soldiers were tearing apart the blacksmith shop. Aiko was begging them to release her father. One soldier twisted the blacksmith's arm while two others ransacked the workshop. Riku paused. Panic lunged instantly. "Don't freeze! You're scared! You can't do anything!" But the second heart, the one that pulsed from within the fire, carried him forward. One step, then another. He didn't shout, didn't rush, didn't swagger with courage. He simply walked in silence. A soldier spotted him. "Hey, you, move!" Another swung his blade toward him. Aiko stared at Riku as if she'd forgotten how to breathe. Riku said nothing. He lowered his shoulders, steadied his breath, narrowed his eyes. Panic still screamed inside his skull, but it no longer steered his body. The soldier charged. Riku's movement wasn't fast. It was disturbingly calm. He shifted one step aside. The blade sliced only air. With a gentle push of his hand, Riku knocked the soldier off balance. "What are you doing?" the man barked. Riku didn't answer. His eyes had taken on the color of the stone quarries, cold, grounded. The other soldiers hesitated. Just one moment of doubt altered the entire current of the scene. The grip on Aiko's father loosened. Shocked hope flickered in Aiko's face. Riku never threatened, never boasted. With nothing but his posture, his gaze, his silence, he became a point the wind couldn't bend. At last the soldiers withdrew. "This village will be inspected again," one muttered. Then the brigade left, the clatter of their armor fading down the road. The village exhaled as one. While Aiko embraced her father, Riku barely heard anything. He was listening to his chest. Panic was still there, but faint now, distant, and beneath it, steady as a buried ember, the second heart continued to beat. He looked at the winter sun breaking between the clouds. Gensi watched him from afar and dipped his head. Not a praise, not a thanks, just acknowledgement. And Riku understood something, the still center he had felt near the stone lantern. The calm reflection on the lake had not been extinguished. The second heart, born from the fire, was real, and now it was alive. The harsh winds of winter's final days wrapped the mountains of northern Honshu in a gray shroud, and an uncanny silence passed over the village. The marks left months ago by Lord Kashiwara's soldiers were still etched into the earth, yet the village was no longer the same. Neither the people were the same, nor was Riku. That morning it was clear a storm was approaching on the horizon. Clouds rolled over the hills like a herd of dark bulls, and the wind whipped through the bamboo fields with violent force. When Riku stepped outside, the wind struck his face, sharp and aggressive, as if testing whether his old fears still lived inside him. But Riku's steps were steady. In his eyes there was no rush, only awareness. In the midst of this silent awakening, Aiko ran toward him. "Riku, the river is about to overflow. Most of the elders can't evacuate their homes." Riku didn't hesitate. He nodded once. "Gather everyone you can in the square," he said. His voice was nothing like it had been months ago. He was the same young man, but his words rose from a place as solid as stone. As Riku walked through the crowd gathering in the square, the panic on everyone's faces was familiar. Children were crying, women rushed around collecting their belongings, unsure what to do. The roar of the wind mixed with people's shouts, and for a moment everything dissolved into chaos. In the past, Riku's mind would have collapsed within seconds. Catastrophic thoughts would have consumed him, and his heart would have pounded out of his chest. But today, that old panic felt distant, like an echo deep inside a cavern. Riku stepped into the center of the crowd and climbed onto a large stone. Their voices drowned out his presence. But Riku didn't shout. He didn't speak with anger. He simply spoke with the heavy, grounded tone of someone carved from stone itself. "Listen to me." Suddenly, everyone fell silent. Even the wind seemed to stop. "We cannot hold the river," Riku said, "but we can hold on to each other. Take only what you need. Put the elders and children in front. We're heading to the old storehouse on the southern slope. It's the only shelter strong enough to withstand the storm." A man from the crowd shouted, "Why the storehouse? It's nothing but a rotten barn." Riku looked at him. His eyes were not sharp, but calm. "Bamboo bends in the wind, but does not break," he said. "The storehouse is the same. It's the only structure in the village that will remain standing." No one argued. Riku's words didn't land like commands. They landed like truth. People immediately sprang into action. Riku organized them into groups. The strong helped with the evacuation. The young carried the elders. Children were kept protected in the center. No one realized how quickly they were moving. They were following Riku's rhythm. Aiko ran up to him. "How did you make them listen?" Riku smiled as the wind tossed his hair. "I didn't," he said. "The storm did. I'm just showing the way." The sky suddenly darkened. A flash of lightning split open the mountains in a jagged blue streak. The wind howled like a living beast. The river had begun to overflow. Water crashed into the northern side of the village, smashing through wooden fences and dragging them away. People screamed, but there was no panic, because Riku was walking, and everyone followed. When they reached the southern slope, the old storehouse indeed looked like a hollowed-out bamboo shell. From the outside, it seemed ready to collapse, but Riku looked at it with the eye of a master blacksmith searching for the strong vein within metal. He instantly knew where they needed to stand. "Get inside," he said. "Not in the corners. Stay in the center. The walls will shake, but the core won't fall." As people settled inside, the storm unleashed its full fury upon the village. The wind raged with a deafening howl, and the bamboo clattered against each other, sending deep, booming thuds vibrating through the storehouse walls. It felt as though nature was striking with its fists. A woman grabbed Riku's arm in fear. "Do you think it will collapse?" Riku shook his head. "Everything outside collapses," he said, "but not what's inside." She didn't understand, but she calmed down. No one understood. Yet Riku's voice gave them a strange, unexplainable sense of safety. Aiko stood beside him. "You're not the way you used to be," she said. Riku looked at the people huddled inside. "I used to listen to the storm outside," he said. "Now I know the sound of the one inside." The storm raged for hours. Each violent blow shook the storehouse, and people flinched every time, but Riku's posture never changed. It was as if an invisible mountain rested on his shoulders, so steady, so unmoving. He looked like someone who had come to witness the storm, not survive it. The second heartbeat within the flames, the one he had discovered long ago, pulsed inside his chest like a steady drum. Even when the wind screamed, that rhythm did not waver. When the storm finally began to calm, a break appeared in the sky. Villagers stepped outside in awe. The river had flooded, and several homes were destroyed. But no one had died, no children were missing. Everyone was alive. Aiko's father looked at Riku. "You saved us all today." Riku shook his head. "I didn't stop the storm," he said. "We simply refused to surrender to the one inside us." As he spoke, Master Gensi appeared on the slope a few meters away. No one had seen him arrive. As always, it was as if even the wind made way for him. Riku walked toward his master. Gensei's eyes held no pride, no praise, only a deep recognition. "Today," Riku said, steadying his breath, "didn't tremble." Gensei pressed the tip of his staff into the ground. "You trembled," he said. Riku looked confused. The master continued, "But you found the thing that stands inside the trembling. Silence followed. Gensei placed a hand on Riku's shoulder. "You are ready." Riku took a deep breath. "For what?" With a faint smile, Gensei said, "To face your own tests." Years passed. The village was rebuilt. Lord Kashiwara's oppression slowly faded. Time settled on the mountain slopes like falling snow. And one morning, a young boy from the new generation came to Riku's dojo. He opened the door timidly. "Master, I can't sleep at night because of anxiety." Riku looked at him with the same steady, silent gaze that Gensei had once given him. "Then your first test," he said, "begins in silence." Despite the boy's confusion, Riku offered no explanation. He simply pointed to the stone lantern swaying gently in the wind. The journey that had begun with Riku so long ago was now calling the footsteps of another. The bamboo bent again in the wind, but never broke. Did you see your own lake, your own storm, your own second heartbeat in this story? If you found a piece of yourself in Riku's journey, write it in the comments. Don't forget to subscribe, because with every new video, you'll take another step toward your own unshaken mind. And if you don't know what to write, just type this: "I heard my second heartbeat too."